Hello and welcome back to Book and Page. We are on to the second video for Beowulf. As always, let's go ahead and do a brief summary of what happened in this section. It's a whole lot of talking, spoiler alert, and then, well, do some talking ourselves. So, we started the book last video with a history lesson. And today we start, well, I wouldn't say exactly with Beowulf. We do in fact start with Beowulf, we just don't know that's his name yet. Yeah, after being asked to identify himself, about another 100 lines. So, we finished last time with a guard of Heorot demanding to know these men who are approaching. And then the leader stands up. This is Beowulf. Not that he's identified himself yet. And in response to this question of who he is, does not give his own name. He in fact identifies his father. His father, who seems to have been well known and well liked, is what he insists. And that's apparently enough for the guard to be like, okay, cool, I will take you up to the hall. And he takes this troop, all dressed in their war gear, up to the hall and actually leaves them before he gets there. He basically says, there you go. I need to return to my watch. And this troop goes up to the hall and very politely waits outside. And what they actually do is they take off their shields and their weapons, and they set them against the wall, and they sit down on the bench and they wait. And here they are addressed by a second guard, who is a steward of the house, it seems. And again, he demands to know who is here. Because there hasn't been a conversation between the watchmen and any of these people. Like, he seems to bring them up and say, there you go, I gotta go back to my watch. So, Beowulf again has to identify himself. And this is where we finally get Beowulf's name. He gives his name to the steward, again identifying his uncle, who's king, Beowulf is serving under, and basically says, I am here because I have heard that there are problems here. I'm here to counsel the king. And the steward says, I will let him know this. And leaves them outside, walks into the king, and tells them who is waiting. And Hrothgar actually recognizes Beowulf's name. He knew Beowulf as a child, apparently. And so says, okay, I know him. He's done great deeds. Bring him in. And Beowulf and his people are allowed to enter. So Beowulf comes in and identifies himself for a third time. And in this identification, names himself again as king, but he also talks about some of the great deeds he's done, and sort of gives a pitch about how he can take on Grendel for Hrothgar. And after this big long speech, Hrothgar says that he knew Beowulf's father, and apparently Beowulf's father started a feud, a very bad feud, that Hrothgar ultimately had to end through blood money payments, made peace, and then he goes on to talk about the problems he's having. Grendel, specifically. And the last thing we hear from this section is Hrothgar inviting Beowulf and his people to feast, which is the polite thing to do. You do feed your guests. So, again, it's actually like quite a drawn-out section of a lot of talking. But we've got some really important, I wouldn't say themes coming up here. We're going through a very important set of steps here. And that is identification and being allowed in. Because Beowulf does have to identify himself 3 different times. He has to identify himself at the shore, he has to identify himself at the door, and then he has to identify himself to the king. And the build-up here is very interesting because of the conversations that end up happening when Hrothgar has allowed him in. So, the fact is, Beowulf doesn't identify himself until the second person. So it seems that the father-son relationship here is more important to state than himself. Because the shore entrance is very important, because this is when you, like, friend or foe is going to be identified, right? So Beowulf chooses to identify himself with his father, who was known to the king, and who is on friendly terms with many people. Or so we think. Because this identification, well, it seems to think more positively on the father than Hrothgar talks about later. Because we have this identification here of, again, Ecgtheow. My father was well known among men, a noble commander named Ecgtheow. He saw many winters before he passed away. Ancient from the court, nearly everyone throughout the world remembers him well. In comparison to your father struck up the greatest of feuds when he killed Hygelac by his own hand among the Whifflings, when the Wender tribe would not harbor him for fear of war. Thence he sought the South Dane people over the billowing seas, the honor Skeldings. Then I first ruled the Danish folk and held in my youth this grand kingdom, city of treasures and heroes. Yeah. Later I settled that feud with free money. I sent the Whifflings over the crest of the waves, ancient treasures, he swore oaths to me. So that's paying the Were Guild. And the Were Guild is basically blood money. Like, here's some money, sorry, we killed a dude. So the relationship here is different, because Beowulf is setting it up like Hrothgar will know his father because his father was well known and well liked. But what's actually happening here is Beowulf is gesturing, in fact, to this relationship that his father had with Hrothgar, in which Beowulf owes him. Like, they've got an oath happening that Beowulf has picked up, and he's now here to fulfill. So the identification here is not, hey, my father was actually a really cool guy. It was, my father and your king were connected. And that identification is going to say, okay, so Ecgtheow was actually, like, a person under Hrothgar, so Beowulf is welcome to come in. But you can't say that as a watchman, right? Nor can Beowulf say that to a watchman. The fact that a feud started and that Hrothgar ended the feud, well, that's between Hrothgar and Ecgtheow and his family, so Beowulf. It's one of those things where, again, like, Hrothgar can bring it up, but nobody else should. Because what's happening here is a very careful dance to make sure no one gets offended. You have to know what to say, how to say it, where to say it, and what you're holding when you're saying it. Because like I said, these guys are in full armor. But they start stripping that away. The watchman understands, yes, you've come from the sea, of course you're all prepared in case anybody attacks you. This relationship is established, and he allows them to come onto the land. He offers their boat protection. He says, like, I'll make sure that nobody affects your boat. And we get the idea that he really is a marine officer because he recognizes the boat is newer. Because he calls it freshly caught. So, freshly filled. Yeah. I shall guide your way, and I will command my young companions to guard honorably against all enemies. Your ship newly tarred upon the sand to watch it until the carved neck wood bears hence across the ocean streams. So basically, until you leave, we will watch your ship for you. Freshly tarred, all nice and good. He then invites them in, but he also knows his place. So when he gets them up to the entrance of Herat, he backs off. I must to the sea and hold my watch against hostile hordes. So everyone here is playing their part, and it's just making sure that you're following that script. Like, the watchman knows he can't just walk into Herat and be like, hey, these people are here. That's not his position. So he sort of shows them the first way in, but they've got some more doors they've got to get through. And the first set of doors is, in fact, actual doors. And Beowulf and his companions here remove some of their war gear. Which is polite, because you don't take, like, weapons into the hall. You're going to give off the wrong impression there, right? So we get a second identification happening, with a warrior standing guard at the door, Stewart. A proud warrior, it's noted. And if you're wondering, he does have a name, it's Wolfgar. He's just identified later, which is something we've already run into with Beowulf here. And with Wolfgar, we finally get Beowulf's name. After the king's. So, as always, he identifies himself to his uncle, the king, stating that they're board companions. So, his uncle, the king, provides these folks food. They eat together. And then Beowulf is my name. He then identifies who he's aiming to speak with. I wish to explain my errand to the son of Hafaldan, famous prince, your lord, if he allows us in his goodness to greet him. And here Beowulf's kind of pushing it. Because it's no, I'm not going to tell you exactly why I'm here. I would like to speak to the king about it. But the watchman got some of that information, because the watchman needed to know that they weren't an invading army. So you can see the different bits of information that Beowulf's giving out. The watchman didn't need to know Beowulf's name. The steward does. The watchman kind of needed to know why he was here. The steward doesn't. So the steward does say, like, he accepts this. I will convey to the friend of the Danes, lord of the Scaldlings, giver of rings, what you have requested. Tell the famous prince of your travels, and quickly announce to you the answer which the good man sees fit to give me. So basically, he says, yes, I will go and tell my king. And again, there's a dance here. Because Beowulf, in asking to be allowed in, has identified the king heritage, and then two titles, famous prince, your lord. The steward then reaffirms this, friend of the Danes, lord of Scaldlings, giver of rings. So we're adding plenty of titles to Hrothgar here, and making sure everyone involved clearly knows who's in charge. It's the king. Beowulf will be beholden to his answer, so if Hrothgar actually says no, Beowulf has to respect that. But the steward knows his position, and the steward doesn't get to make these decisions, Hrothgar does. So he goes immediately inside and says, hey, Beowulf's here. And Hrothgar knows Beowulf. So Beowulf identifying his name here, but not his father, works perfectly fine. He's probably banking on the fact that Hrothgar is going to remember Beowulf, even as a young man. So, we have entered now the second door. And this is the really important part. Because you're now talking to a king, you've got to be subservient here, but you've also got to prove your worth. And I think a lot of us who have written resumes and covering letters have felt this difficulty. How do you sell yourself without sounding overly pompous, right? How do you do this? And I get the feeling Beowulf doesn't quite hit that mark because of Hrothgar's response. So, Hrothgar is open to the idea that he thinks he knows why Beowulf's here. I shall offer treasures for his true daring. So he invites Beowulf in, and Beowulf arrives, and we get his conversation. Be well, Hrothgar, I am Halleck's kinsman and young retainer. In my youth I have done many glorious deeds. This business with Grendel was made known to me on my native soil. Seafarers say that this building stands most excellent of halls, idle and useless to every man. Every evening's light is hidden under heaven's gleaming dome. Then my own people advise me, the best warriors and the wisest men, that I should, Lord Hrothgar, seek you out, because they know the might of my strength. They themselves have seen me, blood-stained from battle, come from the fight when I captured 5, slew a tribe of giants, and on the salt waves fought sea monsters by night, and survived in the tight spot. Avenged the Wendir's affliction, they asked for trouble, and crushed those grim foes, and now with Grendel, the most monstrous beast, I shall by myself have a word or two with this giant. And then here's his real pitch. For you now I wish, ruler of the Bright Danes, to request a single favor, protector of the Scaldings, that you should not refuse, having come this far, protector of warriors, noble friend of his people, that I might alone, all my own band of earls and this hardy troop, cleanse Heorot. I have also heard that this evil beast, in his wildness, does not care for weapons, so too will I scorn, so that Hallak, my liege lord, may be glad of me, to bear a sword or broad shield, a yellow battle board, but with my grip I shall grapple with the fiend, and fight for life, foe against foe. Because Beowulf's saying a lot there. He starts out well with this, again, many titles to Hrothgar. But then he says, like, my people say I'm good. And it's like, we're going in that direction, huh? My people say I'm good because they've seen me do all of these great deeds. I've fought sea monsters, I've killed giants, I've been in battle and taken prisoners, multiple prisoners at a time. Like, he keeps going. To the point where the real pitch is, I'm gonna fight Grendel barehanded. I know you guys have been terrorized by him for 12 years. I'm gonna kill him, I'm gonna do it without a weapon. Can you feel where this might come off a little weird? Beowulf's kind of trying to say, like, I'm the man for the job. But the boast that he's not gonna use weapons and he's gonna fight this being hand to hand, because Grendel also doesn't use weapons, well, it's pointing a little bit to the mistakes Hrothgar might have made. That none of his warriors can fight down a single creature that doesn't use weapons. Beowulf's trying to make himself like the big guy who's going to take him down, but it also kind of comes across as Grendel being too powerful for the great King Hrothgar. It kind of makes sense that immediately, what Hrothgar brings up is the fact that Beowulf's father owes him, because Beowulf's father screwed up and Hrothgar fixed it. Beowulf is giving a pitch for himself here, and Hrothgar, very politely, again, nobody gets overly offended here, but Hrothgar kind of smacks him down. Like, he pokes a couple holes in Beowulf, pointing out the fact to the entire group, because all the people are listening here, that Beowulf's father started a feud that Hrothgar ultimately had to end. Ooh. But Hrothgar's allowed to do this, right? He's in the position of king. Beowulf came in a little strong. But he's willing to accept help. So Hrothgar's answer, and the strange feeling, like, the whole feud thing seems to come out of nowhere, and especially that switch then into talking about the problem with Grendel, feels strange. Like, they feel unconnected. But in Hrothgar's head, it must make sense. Right? Like, Whoa, 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 kid. Your family's far from perfect. Your father screwed up. I'm the one that fixed it. I'm the king he owed allegiance to. But I will accept your help in regards to Grendel. If you want to go for it, I will accept it. And in fact, I will invite you into the hall. And that's where he invites Beowulf and his companions to feast. So Beowulf has successfully gotten through the doors. It's just a question now of whether or not he can live up to that. Because we've still got some challenges coming his way. Even before we meet Grendel. But he's gotten through the important layers. He is inside the hall, and the king has accepted his help. I'm ready for more. So I'm going to keep reading, and I hope you do too. See you next time.